A natural disaster that led to a nuclear disaster more than 8 years ago is still causing problems for Japan, and that's the first story we're covering today on CNN 10. I'm Carl Azus. The big question facing the Japanese government is, where do you put the water? What we're talking about is radioactive water, water that's been contaminated by a damaged nuclear power plant. On March 11, 2011, a 9.1 magnitude earthquake, a very rare and very severe strength, struck about 230 miles off the coast of mainland Japan. It caused a tsunami with 30-foot waves that swept inland, leading to the deaths of roughly 20,000 people and cutting off electricity to the Fukushima Daiichi nuclear power plant. Cooling systems at 3 of its reactors failed, causing them to melt down. That sent radiation into the air and led to the evacuation of more than 100,000 people from the area. Since this happened, Japanese officials have had to pump water, tens of thousands of tons of it, to keep the fuel cores cool. Once that water's used, it's contaminated and has to be stored. And now, storage space is running out. A Japanese government official says there are no other options than to release the contaminated water into the ocean and dilute it. We don't know how much water would be dumped at sea, and the government hasn't made a final decision to actually do this. But it has led to concerns by countries like South Korea, whose government has suggested that Japan work with it to make sure the contaminated water doesn't hurt the ocean or the nations nearby. 10-second trivia. What did CDC stand for when the agency was founded in 1946? Centers for Disease Control, Communicable Disease Center, Center for Disease Containment, or Council on Disease Containment? What began as the Communicable Disease Center is now the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention. The CDC is one of the organizations investigating an outbreak of illnesses related to vaping, smoking electronic cigarettes. Across 33 states and the U.S. Virgin Islands, hundreds of possible cases have been reported. Health officials say they don't know yet what the specific cause is, but all of the people who've gotten sick have a history of using e-cigarettes. On Wednesday, the Trump administration announced a proposed ban on flavored e-cigarette products. If the government's recommendations are enacted in the months ahead, only tobacco-flavored products would be allowed. The makers of the other flavors would be able to ask for government approval to sell their products, but they wouldn't be allowed to do so unless those products actually get approved. According to the Department of Health and Human Services, more than 25% of American high school students say they've vaped within the past month, mostly with fruit or mint flavors. It's part of a continued rise in the number of young people who are vaping.
It needs to be thought of as an injury to the lungs caused by something in the vaping, and it is very severe.
In Houston, doctors are sounding the alarm as 3 people are hospitalized after using e-cigarettes. In New York, the Bloomberg charity is giving $160 million to fight what's being called an epidemic of vaping.
Kids are dying, people are dying now and getting addicted. The timeline is yesterday, not tomorrow.
And in Washington, the First Lady herself has tweeted, "I am deeply concerned." Why is the worry exploding now? In just the past few days, the Centers for Disease Control reported a huge jump in the number of people developing mysterious lung illnesses after vaping, to over 450. At least a half dozen are believed to have died. The American Medical Association has now come out urging people to avoid the use of all e-cigarette products. And the Food and Drug Administration has warned Juul Labs, the leading manufacturer, about misleading advertising and statements, especially to school kids where vaping is growing exponentially.
Did the presenter call Juul quote-unquote totally safe more than once?
Yes.
Juul says that school outreach program was ended in 2018, and the company will fully cooperate with probes into their marketing and products.
We never wanted any non-nicotine user, and certainly nobody underage, to ever use Juul products.
But that's not enough for the governor of New York, who is launching a state investigation complete with subpoenas.
This is a frightening public health phenomenon.
Even as reports of more serious problems keep rolling in.
That was CNN's Tom Foreman, and you'll probably be hearing more from him in the months ahead because he does a lot of election explainers, and the U.S. is having one of those next year. The incumbent U.S. President Donald Trump is seeking a second term. There are 3 other Republicans challenging him for the party's nomination, but experts say they're all long shots. The president is almost certain to get the GOP nomination for the 2020 election. There are no debates scheduled for Republicans, but there are several coming up for Democrats, including one tonight. A record number of Democrats are running for their party's nomination. 20 of them are still in the race, and that's in addition to 6 who've dropped out. Tonight's debate will feature 10 of the candidates, and they'll all be looking for ways to distinguish themselves from the rest of the field and position themselves for the upcoming presidential election.
If you want to get elected president, the best way to do so is to find a way to win the debates you are in. And I just happen to have a few handy-dandy tips on how to do just that. Tip number 1, tell your life story in the most favorable possible terms.
Who am I? Why am I here?
Americans love up from the bootstrap stories. You came from nothing, and then you worked hard, and now you're here. And you represent something great about our democracy. Tip number 2, have a few planned lines, in your pocket to go to when your opponents inevitably challenge you on your weak spots.
I am not going to exploit, for political purposes, my opponent's youth and inexperience.
One thing you have to remember when you're about to roll out that pre-planned line, take your time and make sure you say it right. Now, what you say obviously matters in a debate or when you're running for president. But tip number 3 deals with how you look. Remember, this is a TV program. How you look is conveyed to people. You want to be confident without being arrogant. You want to be knowledgeable without being a know-it-all. Tip number 4, use real people stories. Like I once knew a reporter from Washington named Chris, and he told me, pick good people and anecdotes and use them sparingly.
Senator, you're no Jack Kennedy.
Tip number 5, try to make a moment, but don't try too hard. I know this seems contradictory, but what you want in this age of viral sharing is something that will get sent around for days and weeks after the debate ends.
There was a little girl in California who was part of the 2nd class to integrate her public schools, and she was bused to school every day. And that little girl was me.
Tip number 6, get and keep your facts straight. If you are going to attack one of your opponents, you must have that attack be airtight. Tip number 7, avoid unforced errors. This one is somewhat obvious, yes, but remember, the spotlight is on these candidates. But as the past has shown, mistakes get made.
It's 3 agencies of government when I get there that are gone. Commerce, education, and the, what's the third one there? Let's see.
So that's it. 7 quick and easy-ish tips on how to stand out in a presidential debate. And remember, if you don't stand out in a debate, you're never going to be standing up to get inaugurated president.
In surfing, people can hang 10, that's 10 toes off the front of certain longboards, but only dogs can hang 20. This happened at the 14th annual Surf Dog Surfathon at a dog beach in California. More than 70 dogs surfed in costume at a fundraising event for a local animal care center. The top dogs, the best canine surfers, were judged on everything from ride length and confidence to how happy they looked while surfing. Seems like the Portuguese water dog will be good at that, not to mention the Surferian Husky or the Chinese Wave Crested. The Wave-Marider should be able to surf with Maltese, and the Berger Picard could catch some serious Airedales. Seems like the Border Collie, though, would be the most sure thing. I'm Carl Azus. Thanks for hanging CNN.